Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. Oh, man, I just had another insane coughing fit, so I fear it's not over yet. But for better or worse, I'm here, you're here. Let's get down to it. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about careers, so job search, resumes, interviews, all that kind of stuff, salary negotiation, networking, anything kind of in that area of that ilk. That's what we talk about here. This is an interactive live stream, so if you're seeing my face, you should see a chat box somewhere nearby. If you are a subscriber of my channel, you should be able to get into the chat box and ask questions. Tell me what's up with you. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out. The name of this episode is, what are your salary expectations? What salary do you need? Best answers. So we're going to be talking about both of those. It's essentially the same question. This is episode 109. We've done 109 of these things. So yeah, welcome. There's 8 people here. Thank you for joining me. So yeah, as always, just public service announcements. Thank you to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. Thank you to my super thanks donors, to my Patreons, and to all my participants. Thank you for being here. You guys are the reason I do this. Okay, let's get into it. So one of the most important aspects of getting hired, or one of the most important hurdles you're going to be up against, is the salary question. This can happen on an application. It can happen in an interview. It's a huge topic, like salary in general, or compensation in general is like a huge topic. I used to teach a course on this years ago in university. But yeah, and it's an example, like I always say, of the fact that you have a very complex relationship with the recruiter or hiring manager. In some ways, they're your ally. You know, you work with them to get hired, and then you both benefit. But this is an example of when they are your adversary, because you are acting in your self-interest and they are acting in their self-interest, and you are trying to get as much compensation out of them as you possibly can, and they are trying to get as little compensation to you as they possibly can. So your goals conflict entirely, 180 degrees like that. So they're your adversary. And it's a very delicate kind of topic because you want to get paid. That's the reason why you're getting a job in the first place, or you're there talking to them. But it's a sensitive topic. Some people have a really hard time with this. They feel very awkward. And it's well known that in, for example, a job interview, a lot of recruiters, especially these days, they'll take full advantage of social anxiety to make you feel more awkward when it comes to this question, so that you will back down and not press your arguments and just accept whatever they are willing to do. And, you know, this is a well-known thing. So the question is, how do we respond to this? Well, let me start by saying that whether this question is on an application or it's in an interview where they're asking it to you face-to-face, you have different responses, okay? And that's simply because in an interview, you can speak freely. You know, you could give a number, or you could give an explanation. You know, that's certainly possible if you're talking to somebody face-to-face. But on an application, you know, often you can't. Often they make it a required question in a job application, say on a website, and it's compulsory, so you can't skip the question. And they make it so that you have to enter a single number in the field when you type it in on a web form, and it has to be a number. It can't be a range. It can't be words. You can't say negotiable, you know, or anything like that. You have to give a number. And so it's a bit of a different situation answering this on a form than it is in an interview. So let's start with a form, okay? Maybe that would be a good place to start. You're filling in a job application online or something, and it says, what are your salary expectations? Or some variation of that says, what salary do you need? What compensation do you need? What pay, what wage, you know, whatever we're talking about here, it's all the same for our purposes. And they give you a field. Now, if you can, ideally, you would skip this question, because the goal should be not to give a number or not to give any kind of indication of what your expectations are until you get to the end of the process where they give you an offer. That's the strategy that is best for you, okay? You want them to think that you're worth a lot, and then you want them to think that you're not that you're expensive, but that you are worth a lot, that they should want to pay you a lot because they're getting a really valuable thing for the money they're paying, right? So bottom line, you want to try and avoid answering this as much as possible. So if you can skip the question, do it. If you can't, which is usually how it goes, if you could give a vague answer, you say negotiable, or you say market, somewhere near market price, or something like that, that would be preferable. But often you can't do that either. You have to give a number. So if you have to give a number, what number should you put? That's the big question. I think everybody knows this already, but I'm going to spell it out just in case you don't, okay? Here's the problem. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, right? You got a rock and you got a hard place, and you're right in the middle, right? If you give too low a number, that might look attractive to them, but then the problem is that you end up, in all more likelihood, making very little money at your new job, and that's bad for you, right? If you say a higher number, obviously that's good for you, but then you run the risk of pricing yourself out of the running so that they eliminate you based on the fact that you asked for too much money, and they go with another candidate who's cheaper, who didn't ask for as much, right? So that's the dilemma. So what's best for you is a high number, but that can pretty much eliminate you. What's best for them is a low number, but then you lose, right? So what do you put? Here's what you do. Okay, answer is you put the lowest number you would ever possibly accept for this job if everything you didn't know right now about the job turned out to be like a dream job. Okay? You see, when you're applying for a job, usually you know very little about it, okay, in the application stage. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you got a job description where they say, this is the title of your role, and this is where you're working, and this is the name of the company, and this is maybe the nature of your work in a couple sentences, but you really don't know, okay? For example, how much vacation do they give you? What are their benefits like? When you start there, do you have a toxic boss? Do you have a toxic work environment? Are all your coworkers bullies, right? Is it a situation where you sign on for one job, but you end up doing another? They end up sort of giving you other duties that you didn't sign on for and telling you have to do that, right? You don't know what you're walking into. I mean, that sounds very pessimistic. On the other hand, when you show up there, is your boss amazing? Do you feel a real sense of belonging? Do you really enjoy the work? Do you count your coworkers as your best friends? Are there tremendous opportunities for advancement there? Maybe, there's all kinds of networking opportunities and all kinds of things opening up, and this job is your gateway to those things, right? You don't know. You don't know what you're getting into. Maybe you go there and they tell you after 6 months, I'm sorry, your job is relocating halfway across the country. You now have to move or lose your job. You have no idea what you're working into. Is it shift work? The list goes on and on. So this is what I'm talking about. You really don't know. So here they are saying, you need to commit to amount of money that you want, whereas we haven't really told you a lot of what you're going to be, what this job involves, right? So it's a very unequal kind of situation. They're wanting commitments from you at this very early stage, and they're really not helping, right? They're not doing it in good faith. You could look at it like that. So that's why you sort of say, okay, look, I don't know any of those details. Okay, I don't know if there's opportunities. I don't know if it's shift work. I don't know if there's travel. I don't know what their benefits are like, and so on. So you imagine, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's imagine that all those details that I don't know, they all turn out to be really good for me. It's a wonderful place, tremendous opportunities, great benefits, lots of sick days, wonderful people, interesting work, prepares me for a glowing career. But just assume all of that. Now, put the lowest number you would ever take the job for. Okay? It would be a very low number. There's nothing that says you can't revise that number upwards if you end up filling in some of those blanks later. Maybe they reveal more about what the job entails. After the application part, they bring you in for an interview where they tell you, I'm sorry, this job is 75% travel and it's shift work where you're going to be on the midnight shift. Right? Well, you revise your number upwards. That's going to require a little more from me. And then I'd be happy to commit to that, right? So that's how you answer that question on a form when it's in the initial application. Okay, that's what I'd recommend. That way, you don't price yourself out of the market, out of the running, but so you get under that hurdle and then they maybe bring you in for an interview. And then, depending on what you find out there, you have the option of, increasing your salary requirement, right? Some people ask me, they say, well, what if they call you on that? Well, what if they do? It's like, well, at that point, I didn't realize this job was 75% travel and I would be on the midnight shift. That was not disclosed in the original job application. So I responded to what you guys had disclosed in the application. Now that I've discovered this, my situation is such that I'm going to need this. And there you go, right? So you don't fall for this kind of crap. Now, that's if it's on a form. Let's pretend that you get to an interview. Okay, so you go down to a job interview, and one of the questions they're probably going to ask you right off the hop, somewhere in the initial interview, because sometimes the hiring process involves more than one interview, depending on what level you're at and what industry you're in. In the first interview, definitely, they're going to be asking you, what are your salary requirements? And now you don't have to confine yourself to a number. You could say anything you want. You could say something very vague. You could give a number. You could give a range. You could refuse to answer the question. There's all kinds of different things you can do when you're in person, right? So I did a video on this years ago. It's very popular on my channel. It's got millions of views. I recommend a 3-stage answer. Okay, so if they bring this up, you try your darndest to avoid the question. You don't want to give them a number. That's not good. Okay, because once again, you're faced with that between a rock and a hard place thing. If it's too high, they can eliminate you outright. If it's too low, then you're sort of almost committing to not being paid very much, in which case the job doesn't make any sense. So the first response you give is, I'm sorry, I would need more details to answer that. I can't answer that right now. I need much more details, get more of a feel for this job before I'd be able to give you an accurate answer on that. Now, a lot of times a recruiter will just move on to the next question, okay? If you've never done this before, make sure you don't just keep waffling like I'm doing right now. I keep talking, right? What you want to do is you want to give that answer and then you want to shut up, right? They say, what are your salary expectations? And you say, I'm sorry, I would need to know a lot more details about this role and about this situation before I could really give you an accurate answer on that. Just like that, right? You don't keep blabbing. In most cases, the interviewer will just be, okay, and then they move on, right? Now, sometimes they will press you. They'll say, no, I'm sorry. I really need for you to give, a more detailed, precise answer to that. And then you move on to the second stage, right? You're still wanting to avoid answering this question. So here's what I recommend you say next. You throw the question back at them. You say, this position has been approved, right? It was approved by the company. Therefore, the salary range must have been approved. So can I ask what it is? Right? So you throw the question back. What is the salary range for this? And then if they tell you, they give you a range, they say somewhere between here and here, you say, okay, well, somewhere in there works fine for me. Right? So you would like to leave matters there. So if they call you on, they press you further, with the initial answer, which is I need more details, you move on to the second stage where you throw the question back. They say, well, we need you to answer that question more precisely. And you say, okay, well, listen, I mean, this position has been approved. So therefore, the salary range must have been approved for this position. So can I ask what it is? And then sometimes they'll give it to you. They'll say, oh, it's between this and this, in which case you still don't give a number. You just say, well, that works for me, right? Somewhere in there works for me. I'm sure, we can find somewhere in there that works for both of us, something of that nature. Other times they'll really show you how obtuse they're being, and they'll say, well, we don't know. Yes, that's right. I'm recruiting for the job, but I have no idea how much it pays, right? As if anyone's going to believe that, right? That really exposes how fake and stupid the whole thing is, right? It's a tap dance. So, it's like, okay, well, there you go. You're not going to answer me seriously, so, I can't answer you. And sometimes that's where it ends. Okay? Hopefully that's where it does. Sometimes it does. If not, if they press you even further, you move on to the third and final stage of this, third and final response. Okay? Where they say, I'm sorry, we really need you to give us a number, I need an actual number that I can write down. Okay? And then you say the third and final thing. And the third and final thing is you give a wide range. Okay? Really low to really high. Now, those two limits, the low number and the high number, okay, they're not ridiculous. They're not like, just stupid, right? Like anything between $1 and $20 million. No. You give a range that goes from really low to really high, where both numbers are technically possible, but it's a stretch. It's the limits, okay, of that range, right? And you say, listen, look, at this early stage, all I can tell you is somewhere between here and here, somewhere in there, would be fine. That's all I can say. That's the most I can say right now. If I tried to make it any more precise, I'd just be pulling a number out of the air, right? So you give them a wide range. And the reason you do this is because if you give them a range that starts low and ends high, they can't eliminate you because you asked for too much money, right? Because you didn't commit to a high number. You didn't say, I need this high number. You said somewhere in here, right? And that range starts pretty low. So they can't eliminate you based on salary demands. But yet, you're not committing to a low number. You see how this dog and pony show works, right? This is negotiation. You're not committing to the low number. So it allows you to push for a higher number later on, which is the whole point of this, right? Okay, so it's a three-stage answer. Number one, I'm sorry, I would need to know more details before I could really answer that. Hopefully that works. If that doesn't work, number two, you throw it back at them. Well, this position was officially approved by the company. So therefore, the salary range must have been officially approved by the company. Can I ask what it is? And then whatever they say, you say that works for me. Somewhere in there, yep, that works for me. No problem. Hopefully it ends there. If it doesn't end there, you move to the final answer you give, which is a wide range. Somewhere between here and there, I'm sure somewhere in there would be fine. Right? I can't get any more precise at this early stage, but that's what I can tell you. So you're giving numbers, but it's a range, not a single number. Okay? And that's how you answer that. And then if hypothetically they were to try and put the screws to you even more, which is kind of a stretch at this point, they're stretching what's reasonable and polite. You don't budge. You just say, I'm sorry that I can't give you any more precise answer than what I already have. This is a very early stage. I don't understand. I don't know the details of the role. I don't know the work environment. I mean, that's as good as I can do. I can't commit to down to the cent. That's not possible. Right? So that's my recommendation for how to answer this in a job interview. And earlier we talked about how to answer this on an application where you have to give a number. So hopefully that makes sense. That's what I have to say about that. Let's go to you guys. I see there's some people in the chat. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Let's go to your questions. Roxanne is here. Roxanne says, hi there. I usually give a number that I really want, but I don't know what's the best answer. Okay, well, hopefully I've at least given you my recommendation. Renegade says, I usually put £1 because of ATS. Yeah, the problem with that is that a lot of the time you're not able to, because either they prevent you from putting in like a ridiculously trivial number in there. They won't allow it. Or they'll allow it, but then what they do is they filter your resume out because of that, right? The reason why they include these questions is not to have you bypass them. They include the question because they want an answer. And if this is their first encounter with you and you're already not being forthcoming and you're trying to get around what they're saying and it's pretty obvious, they're just going to eliminate you. That's usually how that works. So that can backfire. The other thing is that when this is put on a web form, they will have two hurdle rates often. One will be an upper hurdle rate. They say anybody who wants more money than this, sorry, eliminated, you're too expensive. But they also have a lower limit. And they say anyone who wants less money than this is clearly not serious, therefore you're eliminated, right? So that's what counters that tactic right there. Do you always encounter that? No, but often you do. So that's the risk you run with it. Roxanne says, yesterday a recruiter asked me about my salary expectations and I gave a range such as between that and hour. Okay, yeah, that's kind of in line. Like I would try and, like I recommended, like I told you guys a moment ago, I would recommend that you don't jump to that. That's only if you can avoid giving a number at all. You don't want any kind of discussion of this until you're at the offer stage. And the idea is that, you see, the theory is that you want them to fall in love with you. You want them to think, okay, that's the person we want. Then you want to talk about salary or compensation, right? Because if you're not at the point where they really have decided they want you, the only thing they're going to do is they're going to compare you to your competition on price. That's the sort of buying process. Like when you go to the store, you go to the grocery store to buy bread, and you're confronted with a whole row of different bread products. They're all slightly different and they all have different prices, right? What's the first thing you do if you don't have it into your brain like I want this particular product? If you're just browsing, what do? The first thing you do is you look at the price. And if one loaf of bread is $1 and the next one is $10, you're probably going to eliminate the $10 one just outright, like out of hand, without even investigating it further, right? Maybe the $10 loaf of bread is the best bread you'll ever have in your entire life, right? But you're not going to get that far because you've just eliminated it based on the fact it's $10, right? So that's the syndrome, that's the effect we're countering with this, okay? You want them to look at you alongside the other candidates. You want them to get to know you. You want to stay in the running long enough where they get to see what your value is and they go, hey, this person's actually pretty good. They have all the skills. I get along with them great. They seem to have the right attitude and the right ambitions. Like they seem to fit right in here. I like them, you know? You don't want to be eliminated on price before you get to that point, right? You want to get there, and then once they've decided that you're the one they want, then you want to discuss salary after that. Carl Pearl says, so does the answer change depending on the stage of the meeting? Absolutely. At the beginning, you don't want to discuss salary, right? At the end, you do. That's the most obvious change, right? Carl says, let's say that we are having a brief meeting of 15 minutes, for example, the typical meetings on remote jobs. Okay, but when we say, I guess I need more detail, we need to add something more, I think. No, you don't. No, it's the first attempt to bypass the question, right? I mean, you can if you want, but you don't have to. And it's not that you don't need anything more. This is the very first time they're talking to you. You've never even been, like if this is not a remote job, if this is a physical job, you've never been to their property before. It could be in a slum. There could be a knife fight going outside the front gates of the company. I mean, you don't know, right? How much would they have to pay you to work there, right? You go there, it's unhealthy, there's chemicals all over the ground, there's, bullies like, around the front door. You have no idea, right? Let's say it's a construction job, Some of this stuff I'm saying isn't as far-fetched as you might think. So, you know what I mean? You've never even been there, you've never even seen your boss, you've never even seen the work that they want to do, that they want you to do. You don't have any idea of the conditions. And there could be some pretty unpleasant surprises when you get in there. So, you know what I mean? The other thing is that with all jobs, there's risk. Let's say that you're gainfully employed right now and you've got a fine job going. Doesn't pay amazing, but it's good. You like your job. You've been there for a while, right? Let's pretend these people offer you a job. They say, fine, okay, you start March 1st. You say, great. You quit your job February 1st or whatever, right? You throw it away. And then you start on March 1st and they announce on March 1st, I'm sorry, we've had to lay people off, so I'm sorry, you have no job as of now, right? There's risk involved. You need to be compensated for the risk. You know what I mean? Roxanne says, the recruiter told me $38 per hour because I asked him what the client's budget. I hope I'm not eliminated. If they told you that, if they said it pays this, and you said, I don't know what you said in response, if you said that's fine, you shouldn't be eliminated by that. They've set the price. They've said this is what it pays, and you said that's fine with me. So I wouldn't have, unless you told them like absolutely not or something, then I don't think you'd be eliminated. Buteween says, what does it mean when an owner gives a quick, snappy interview, gets sort of impressed, and doesn't bring up salary? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Look, it takes all kinds. There's some bad employers out there, but there's a lot of good ones. And, a lot of hiring managers are willing to pay a decent amount if they get a good employee. You know what I mean? Obviously, that isn't universal, but a lot of times that's what you encounter. So, it could be a situation like that. They don't want to talk about salary. They want to see if you're the type of person they're looking for, if they're interested in you. That's the first thing. If they're interested, then they'll get to the salary part. What's the point of talking salary to someone that you might not even want to hire? You know what I mean? Like, why haggle through salary if you don't even know if that's the person you want to choose? You know what I mean? So it could be that. That is a thing that happens. Chamika, is that how you say that? Chamika says, hi. Recently, I applied for a job in the UAE, as you said, given a range for the salary. I got that information from inside the company. Now they called me for an interview, okay? But now I have found out that the salary for this position, with my experience, can be doubled. How can I handle this in the interview? That's not really much of a dilemma. You can ask for whatever you want. You can say to them whatever you want. You don't have to justify yourself. You could say, listen, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm really excited about working here. I think you guys are great. What I've seen so far is like really, really, intriguing. However, on further reflection, I've decided that because of my situation, I'm going to require this. I'm going to require this number or this element, this point. Okay, so now usually what you want to do is you don't want to bring up anything like that until you get to the offer stage. Okay, so if they don't select you and they don't give you a job offer, what does it matter? You know, I mean, it's all academic, right? But if you do get to the final round, and not saying stuff like this will increase your likelihood of getting to the final round, where they select you and then they give you an offer, right? Okay, that's the time to negotiate. Because at that point, they've decided you're the one they want. They got their heart set on you. They've already committed to doing background checks and to writing you a potentially custom offer, right? So all that work is done. And if you were to pull out now, you say, I'm sorry, I withdraw my application, or no dice, your offer is not good enough. It causes them pain, okay? They've done extra work for you. The hiring manager has gotten their hopes up that A, they're going to get you, and B, the process is now over, okay? And if you pull out now, a couple of things happen. Number one, if there's a recruiter involved, it's embarrassing for the recruiter. Because the recruiter is like a consultant. They advise the hiring manager and they say, well, I think this candidate is the one that you should go with. They also say this is a reasonable amount of compensation to offer them, so I say we go with this, right? Now, if you then throw that back in their face, that obviously shows that they got it wrong, right? So it's embarrassing for them. And for the hiring manager, first of all, they might be disappointed they don't get you. They're starting to envision you as the new employee. And number two, it means that the process now has to keep going. They were hoping for this to be over. And hiring managers, they don't like doing this process. They have actual work to do, like running something, running a department or running a team or whatever they're doing. The hiring process is not the standard part of their role. They do it when they have to, but that's not the reason why they're what they concern themselves with. This is a distraction. This is something that takes up their time, takes up their effort. They have to sit in rounds of job interviews when this is not the core competency of what they do. They might run a production operation or a marketing department or an accounting department or whatever they do, right? This is a sideshow. They want this to be over. So when you throw the offer back at them, that causes them pain for a variety of reasons. They don't want an offer to be declined by a candidate, okay? So that's the time to negotiate. And the form it would take is if they give you an offer, usually the way it would work is you start out by like agreeing to like a lot of the points. Okay, vacation days are fine, sick days are fine, hours of work is fine, bonus is fine, like all the different elements. My duties are fine. Details of how I do reporting and, remote work and hour, that's all fine. So I'll give you that. I mean, this is less than I'm used to. That's not as good as what I'm used to, but that's fine. I'll give you guys that. This number, I need you to scratch it out and write in this number, and then we got a deal. I can start whenever you want, right? You're working with them. You're excited about it. You're accommodating. All they have to do is this one little thing, and then the whole thing is done. If they don't do it, you may walk, right? Now, just keep in mind, if you're going to do that, since I'm talking about this, I'll just mention the full deal. If you're going to do that, you can't bluff. Any bluff you do will be called, okay? So if you're absolutely desperate for a job, then you probably will not want to negotiate, right? Okay, because you just need something, right? But usually the way it works is you haven't quit your current job yet, or you're doing fine for the moment. You got other interviews lined up and stuff, so you can afford to take a bit of risk. So if they call your bluff and they say, well, I'm sorry, this is as good as we can do. You say, okay, no problem. I'll get back to you. The magic words, which means, of course, that you will never, ever get back to them. It's a no, right? Put that in your pipe and shove it up your ass. So, you know what I mean? So that's how you handle that kind of thing, right? And that's how it plays out, because only at the offer stage will they feel any pressure to accommodate you. If you try and do this before the offer stage, while they're still talking to a bunch of other candidates, they just eliminate you and go with somebody else, right? So, so that's the deal. So you can ask for whatever you want Kamika. You can ask there. It will never feel awkward if you know how to phrase it, right? And in this case, you say, upon further reflection, based on my current situation, I've sort of worked it out, and it turns out that I need this. So just letting you know. Right? You're welcome, Kamika. So hopefully that was helpful. That's kind of the sort of background to this. Salary and negotiation are like big topics. There's a lot of elements. There's a lot of things all happening at once. But hopefully that gives you an idea. Certainly for worker level jobs and stuff. That's about all there is. That's kind of the way this plays out. There's not much more. If you do higher level stuff, it gets like exponentially more complicated. There's many different components to compensation. They give you different things. So it's not always just salary. There's like other things in there. There's like signing bonuses. There's other types of bonuses and performance pay. You might have profit sharing. There's all kinds of components. They might even give you stock. It's like, depending on what level you're at, or whatever weird hangups that employer might have. I remember the very first career job I took when I was like 25 years old or something. They gave you stock. They gave you shares. It's like they gave you money, but then they gave you shares, and I didn't understand what the shares were at that point in my life. I was like, what's this? It's like, what the hell do I do with this? And it was kind of, in a way, it wasn't bad that I didn't understand what it is, because it was an obfuscation. It was like a thing that makes them feel like they're giving you something really valuable. So you're supposed to feel like this is a really valuable thing, when in reality it kind of wasn't. So, how do you say this? S-Z-A-B-O, Boana. I know the Boana. Sazboana, is that how you say that? Thank you for being a member of my channel. You're awesome, and it's great to see you here. Sazboana says, if they force me to give a range and I see that it's too much, should I add something like it's negotiable, or is it too late? Hold on a second. Oh man, as I try to resist going into another coughing fit. My eyes are watering. Okay, so if they force me to give a range and I see it's too much, should I add something like... Usually they'll force you to give a number. Like, that's what they want. They want you to commit to a number. They actually don't want a range. They want to pin you down to a precise number. Listen, like, okay, they might have all kinds of wants, wills, and needs. They would love you to play right into their hand. They would love you to say, I'll work for minimum wage, no matter what the job is, right? You could be hired on for an executive, and they'd love you to say, oh yeah, I'd work for minimum wage, right? They always want you to go lower, right? That's what they do, right? The same way you go to a store and you need to buy food or whatever, you will always want them to price it lower and lower. There is no lower limit. As low as possible, right? As low as you can get is the right price, right? So, some good employers will keep it polite and cordial and follow etiquette and protocol, and they won't put like undue social pressure on you, right? Other less sophisticated employers, bad employers, they'll like practically bully you, to give the right answer. You say like, I need this, and they say, well, that's ridiculous. Please, come on, you insult me by giving me a non-serious answer? Come on, how much money do you need? Like they'll play hardball, and they'll use all these kinds of retarded, like, tactics to try and get you to commit to a low number. It doesn't work in the end, by the way, but they'll do that. Now, I wouldn't say it's negotiable, because, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's personally, this is my personal opinion about it. I wouldn't say it's negotiable. I just don't like that phrase, because it's like you're backing down. Like you say, I need this much. And they say, are you sure? And you say, well, it's negotiable. It's like, no, I need this much. And they say, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. That's what I need. Because you've done your homework. You've thought through this. You've decided, okay, it only makes sense for me to take the job if I make this much. If I don't make that much, then it doesn't make any sense for me to quit my current job and move over there. Or, I've got 3 interviews lined up in the next month. It doesn't make any sense for me to like jump at something that's only paying this much, because I know that, people with my skills can make somewhere in here. Why would I jump on this and commit to that? You know what I mean? Right? So you've done your homework. You know kind of what makes sense for you and what doesn't. That's a key requirement of doing this, by the way. You can't just go in there and push for as much as you get and you have no idea what you need. Right? Okay, so personally, I wouldn't say that. Like, you can if you want, but it's not the end of the world. But it might get them off your back, but temporarily. But then if they bring it up again, you said it was negotiable, so they're expecting you to go lower than the number that you said earlier. You know what I mean? You're welcome, Roxanne. You had a very intelligent question there. Saz Boana says, thank you for your answer. Another question, should I ask or tell what? About the salary if they don't ask on the last interview? No, don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. As I said, the only time you want to talk about this is the offer stage. And what that means is when they've given you an offer and you see what they're offering, that's when you want to discuss it, right? If it hasn't gotten to that point yet, and it might not even get there, don't bring it up because you don't want to talk about it. You want them to fall in love with you. You want to tell them why you're awesome, all the things you can do for them, how you're an amazing employee, how they'll never have any issues with you. That's what you want to communicate to them. Not like start bringing up salary, Okay, so if they haven't brought it up, just let it lie. Like, just don't mention it. Okay, you're going to have, if they hire you, you're going to have to talk about it eventually. Wait till you have to. Wait till the offer. Boana says, it was superficially discussed in the first round. Okay, yeah. Let's see if you can get to the end of the process and then pick up where it left off. And remember, you can ask for anything you want. You have the right to ask for anything you want. You have the right to say, I will only take this job for this amount of money. Now, they have the right to say no to anything, right? Everybody's got their rights here. Everybody's free to act. You're not like required by law to work for them as a slave. You know what I mean? So don't worry about like, oh, it might be awkward to ask for what I need, It's like, no, just simply learn a couple of key phrases that allow you to state your position, what you need, without any undue awkwardness. It's a perfectly reasonable thing, right? And then they can decide what they want to do from there. But like just caving to them at every juncture is not the way to go, right? So don't feel awkwardness. What you want to try and do is avoid the discussion until the very end. Ideally, that's what you can do. So hopefully that makes sense. I see there's 38 people here. Thank you for being here. Incidentally, if you want to go deeper into this stuff and my advice for like every other aspect of getting a job, check out that course. There is a link in the description box underneath this live stream. And I've also done at least one FAQ, frequently asked questions, video about that course, so it's as transparent as possible. You know what you're getting before you pull the trigger, if that's what you're looking for. If your job search is not going anywhere and you have no idea what to do and you're worried that you're just going about everything completely the wrong way, check out that course. That's why I created it. While we're waiting for other questions and comments in the chat, which hopefully people will provide so that I have something to talk about, I also want to draw your attention to that. Let's see if I get my arm the right way. My screen is flipped, right? So it's hard to do these kind of things. but right there, if you're looking to tack on above average communication skills, for example, you want to be promoted into management or upper management, advanced communication skills are one of the things you need to do that. As you go sort of higher and higher, there's a lot, more things you need to know. So that component is what I put into that course. A while ago, I was a CEO of a mid-sized company, small to mid-sized company, and it's kind of all my advice and all the stuff I had to learn between coming out of university in my mid-20s all the way to being a CEO much later on. All the stuff I had to learn that you did not learn in school, you learned kind of sort of on the job if you were tuned into it and if you chose to, to push in that direction. So that's what I learned there. It's called Write Like a Professional. It is about writing, but it's more about what to say in different situations. So that's kind of the value. So check that out if you are interested in that kind of thing. It can open doors. Says Buana says, is it good or bad strategy to mention salary if they ask about my top 5 priorities or motivation about a position or workplace? Yeah, I would not recommend mentioning salary as a motivator. Now listen, we all know that that's why we get jobs, that's why we do what we do. We need to eat, right? And if you can make more compensation, obviously that motivates you, yes. But is that the answer they're wanting to hear? No, it's not. Because someone who is a terrible employee and is not any kind of fit for that role will say that. Money motivates them as much as it motivates you, if you're the perfect candidate for it, right? So it motivates everyone. So is that what they're looking for? No. What they're looking for, a question about motivation, is they're looking for genuine enthusiasm about the work, about the organization, about, the future, where it could go, what you can do in that role, because you enjoy the work. You chose to go into that line of work for a reason. It speaks to you. It inspires you. They want you to be excited about working for them so that you will be motivated to do a lot of work and high quality work, and optional things, not just do the bare minimum, but you will be inspired to do extra work that will be beneficial to them and beneficial to you in the way that you're going to explain here, right? Okay. So they want to hear things like, well, I'm passionate about this work. I think it's tremendously exciting what's happening right now. We're bringing AI into this. We're bringing new technologies into this. We're bringing new sort of methods and processes and, new things into this world, that opens up a whole realm of possibilities where this could go. I have skills, not just in this, but I have skills here and here. And the idea of being able to combine those with this, subject matter in one role, that's incredibly exciting for me. And that really makes me want to push this type of work into the future and assist, companies like yours, that feel this way and do this kind of thing. Stop me whenever you want, just that kind of stuff. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for genuine passion and excitement backed up by seemingly logical reasons that preferably tie only to you, because you're talking about your skills and your things that inspire you, that's backed up with maybe your past experiences. So hearing that, they'll go, that makes a lot of sense, and you seem like the right person to do this. You seem like you'd be very excited, you'd be happy, you'd be going above and beyond, you wouldn't quit on a dime, and you're a perfect fit for this type of role, right? So things of that nature. I wouldn't say money, Chris says, would you recommend saying I have a salary range in mind that I'm comfortable with, but could we save that a bit later when I have a better grasp of exactly? No, I wouldn't say that. You're absolutely right that is the right strategy, but you don't articulate that out loud. It's like saying, okay, we're in a job interview. It's like saying, listen, I have, when they ask you, why do you want this job? And you say something like, well, I have an idea of the type of work I like to do, and I'm not really sure if this is that type of work, but I'm hoping that we can get to the end of this interview process without really discussing it, because that way I'd be able to make you think that I am a fit for the job, when the reality is that I might not be. Right? Like, that is also part of your strategy, but do you articulate that to them? No. That's like inviting them to just eliminate you just because you said that, right? Don't tell them your whole plan, right? They probably suspect what your plan is, and you know what your plan is, but if you say it out loud, the whole thing is ruined, and that's part of this tap dance. If you don't understand the contradiction there, you're not stupid. You're absolutely right. It's the effect of manners, which has evolved into etiquette, which has evolved into protocol, which has evolved into tradition, right? We just don't say that because it's bad, right? We all know it. I know it. You know it, but we don't say that because it comes across like you're now purely in it for yourself. You don't give a crap about them. You don't give a crap about doing the job properly, right? And their job is actively to weed those people out, right? So hopefully that makes sense. You're welcome, says Boanna, and I don't know if I said it, but thank you for being a member. You get, as far as I'm concerned, you get priority when I answer questions and things because you're a member. Thank you for joining my channel. Get in the chat. Let me know what you guys are wondering, what you're struggling about. We can talk about other things apart from salary. Any question you might have about careers or hiring or, the job market or recruiters, hiring managers, companies. I'm a private sector guy, so I've been out in the private sector my whole career. I'm not the best person to answer questions about government jobs that specifically apply. Government's kind of its own little bubble that they have their very specific ways of doing things. Same with charities, nonprofit. They're also a little bit of a bubble. I actually got a very, very favorable opinion about some charities and some nonprofits. I'm sure there's all kinds out there, but I had the privilege of, being exposed to some charities and things in my hometown. There's one I got a tour of the place from the CEO, and it just looked amazing. And the thing that occurred to me was that in the private sector, and I've been on the forefront of this, you have employees and you could be paying them six figures, but yet they're disgruntled. They don't go above and beyond. They kind of slow down. They disengage. They're unmotivated, And then over here in a charity, you've got people that are paid a tiny fraction of what those workers were making, but they're 10 times more enthusiastic. They're working way harder. They're going above and beyond. They're much, much more dedicated, And the reaction I had was wow, there's so many people that hiring managers out there that would love to have a team of people that were this team of people that are motivated and as dedicated and as hardworking as these people are, even though they're being paid a pittance, instead of the highly paid workers that they have that are just, they're just unmotivated, the morale is terrible, and, this kind of thing. really, really interesting, eye-opening experience, And the reason is because the workers in the charity, they're obviously getting much more out of it than simply money. Like, they're getting more than cash. They're getting a sense of purpose. I'm only guessing now, but they're getting a sense of purpose, a feeling of like, I'm doing good, I'm giving back, this is the purpose of my existence, I'm helping people, I'm paying it back, like all that kind of stuff. I'm on some kind of higher mission. They're obviously getting a lot of that out of it, whereas the workers clearly aren't, So really interesting. Chris says, any basic or general interview advice for group interviews, or is it basically the same whether it's one-on-one or group? It's basically the same. They ask the same questions, and you answer in the same way. It's the same kind of vibe, dynamic. The only thing that, the only difference for me is that, if you have like a panel interview or a group interview with like 3 or 4 people interviewing you at once, the thing that I'm especially bad at, which is kind of embarrassing because I shouldn't be bad at this, is remembering people's names and remembering who they are. That's the only real difference, because you see, the thing is, if you go to an interview with one other person, there's one person on the other side of the table. That's one person to remember their name and to know who they are. Like, are they the recruiter? Are they the hiring manager? Are they the owner of the company? Are they the accountant? Are they somebody else? Are they your counterpart? Like, are they the person you're going to be replacing, or the person you're going to be working with? That's one person to get to know and to understand who you're dealing with. When you got a panel interview and there's 4 people across the table from you, first of all, it's hard to get their names right all the time. Secondly, it's a lot more work to remember who you're dealing with. If you get a question and it comes from a recruiter, you would give a slightly different answer to it than if that same question came from, say, the owner of the company, right? They'd be looking for different things, and if it came from a hiring manager, it would be different still. They're also looking for different things than the other two. So that's the real challenge, at least for me. In every other respect, it's the same. So I've said this before, but the way I've always handled that kind of encounter is I recommend that everybody prints up business cards. Like, this is a lot easier and simpler than you think. For like literally $20 US or less, you can get like a stack of business cards. You just order them online. And if you have a LinkedIn profile, you essentially put the header of your LinkedIn profile on the business card. Your name, your tagline, like who you are, like engineer, laborer, whatever you are. And then your contact information. And then if you have a photo, like a headshot or something, just put that on there too. And then when you go to an interview and you got like 4 or 5 people or something on the other side of the table and it's kind of intimidating, I put my business cards here. I don't know if you can see, I got like a sort of breast pocket, and you take them out and then you start giving them to people. That's like an instant cue for them to reciprocate and give you their business cards. So presumably they all work for a company, the same company. So you've got like 4 or 5 business cards, one from each person. You can put those on the table in front of you, sort of aligned to, the person where they're sitting. And that way you'll never forget their name, and you can see clearly who they are. You're the recruiter, you're the owner of the company, you're the hiring manager, you're the accountant, the chief accountant for some reason who's here, and you're some kind of HR consultant or something, And then at least you know who you're dealing with, and you don't have to worry about remembering people's names. You can look down, it's like John, Francine, Edna, Gladys, names from like, that everybody uses today, Bartholomew, that kind of thing, right? Or if you're of the European or Scandinavian persuasion, Knut was the latest that I had to get to know. So apart from that, it's the same. Panel interviews are really the same, other than that. Amazed is back, says, professional motivation and enthusiasm far surpass salary amount. High salary in a toxic work environment is unequivocally demoralizing. Not all money is good money. Well, put it this way. If you're going to be in a toxic environment, it's better if you're paid $1 million, and it can partially make up for it for a time. It can't make up for it long term. There's been all kinds of studies done on this, like in universities and stuff, through people with, doctors of business administration stuff. This is what they do. They study this kind of stuff. And they learn new exciting things about people and how they behave. Sometimes it's really depressing. But let's face it, like most jobs suck to a degree, right? And they have to pay you to be there, right? Or it would be a hobby. So it's good that they pay you a lot more if it sucks to a degree, right? And not to be cynical, but I'd almost say, like, look, whatever job you take, it's probably going to suck to a degree, right? If you're lucky, there'll be a lot of, positive points that make you feel good. But, it's not always going to be peaches and cream. So if they give you more money, obviously it's a good thing, right? Ace Shark says, thank you for your time and very helpful insights. Will there be a recording of this stream later? Yeah, all my stream, I know about everybody else's streams. All my streams, I leave them up, so you can come back to this later and watch the whole thing again in your spare time, Put it on your headphones as you're falling asleep. Then you'll have interesting dreams about being with me in this room. It'll be wonderful. Wonderful, right? Best experience of your life right there. And we can talk all about salary for hours. Heaven. It even looks like heaven. I got my camera brightness turned up really high. New experiences. That's what it's all about. So yeah, these are all available on my channel. You can see, if you go to my channel, you can see like the homepage for my channel. You can see there's, I do different live streams that are like in different series. This one is called How to Get Hired. It's where we answer job interview questions. I do another one that's very similar called Honest HR Nitrous. And the idea was we're focusing more on the reality of job search, not the theory, not the way it's supposed to go, but the way it does go. And we also talk about, taking care of your mental health and the stupidity and incompetence that you encounter. Some of the weird things that go on out there, like ghost jobs and, things like this. What's really going on the other side of the table, understanding, the full situation. And ways to hack what you've been told about, like, careers and how to further yourself and how to get jobs and all this kind of stuff. So I also do that one. I'm actually doing an episode of that today in an hour. So yeah, so stick around for that if you're interested. But yeah, get in the chat. Let me know what questions you have. There are 29 people here. Thank you for being here. We started off the stream answering the salary question. What are your salary expectations? How much salary do you need? It's the same question. We answered that for if you encounter it on a job application, like on a web form or something, where you can only give a number or it's very restrictive. You can't skip the question. We then talked about how to answer that question in an interview. Okay, so if they ask you that question in a job interview where you're speaking to a person, where it's a little bit more flexible, you can speak freely and you can give something other than a number. In fact, you should. So we talked about that. And then we talked a bit about some of the concepts surrounding salary and negotiation and, some of the principles at play here. And then we're just taking general questions. Chris says, what if you get a new job and love your boss and then your boss leaves the company? Oh, welcome to my world. I had like 4 jobs in my 20s and 30s, like career jobs, where that happened like 4 times in a row. You get hired by some awesome person. You're excited to take the job. You take it. And then within a short period of time, like maybe 3 months or something, that person leaves. And then you get some colossal prick that is now your boss. They didn't choose you. They didn't hire you. They inherited you. And it's a totally different dynamic. They don't like you, they don't see your value, and it can be tough going, So yeah, I personally can identify with that. Do you recommend proactively getting to know the new boss fast, or sit back and wait for them to reach out? It works out better if you go up to them and say, like, wow, that's a very handsome tie you're wearing today. Oh my God, I didn't know you had such good taste. Do you give points for being ingratiating? No, listen, what would probably be bad is if you hold off, in kind of a weird, fishy way, you kind of don't engage with them for a long time. The polite thing to do is, when they first arrive, is to greet them, like, that day or, shortly thereafter, say, welcome, I understand you're my new boss. I hope that we will get along very well. If there's anything I can do or any questions you might have, don't hesitate to ask. Other than that, welcome aboard. Something like that. Like just a gesture is good. Okay. Now they're probably going to be busy in the very beginning. They're going to be like, their head's going to be spinning. There's a lot of new people. There's a lot of people to learn who they are and get to know, and the whole job might be new to them. You don't know. So they're going to be busy, right? They probably can't devote a lot of time to you, and be your best friend or something. Like that's probably not going to happen. But when you have to interact with them, try and be as polite and as positive as you can. Even if, you don't always get that back, it's still within your best interest to put that out there, right? Don't do the thing where, like, you are really, you got a nice smile on your face and you're very polite, and they seem kind of cold, that one exchange. So you decide, that's it. Okay, you're dead to me. You're clearly a jackass. And, the next time we have to deal with each other, I can tell you it's going to be different. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because you may feel like doing it on some level, but it will be bad for you if you do that, okay? That would be my recommendation. Obviously, situations vary, but that would be my general rule, Just be polite, be friendly, welcome people in, and just the protocol is to say, like, if you ever need help or I can be of any help to you, don't hesitate to reach out, it's good to meet you, something like that. And that just, you start off with, on the right foot, right? Now, if they turn out to be an unreasonable, moron or, totally incompetent, totally nasty, or they got a screw loose or something like that, hey, you can't, there's nothing you can do about that. You can just sort of respond to it. But at least you're giving them every chance to have a positive relationship with you. You want them to see you as somebody good, certainly in the beginning before they get to know you, so that they're open-minded to wanting to get to know you and wanting to see, your good aspects. And then that'll be the best arrangement for everyone. No practical jokes, no like initiation, or any of that kind of stuff. In some work environments, hey, that happens, like that happens with any new employee, whatever. Don't do that to your boss, even if all your coworkers kind of are all thinking the same way and it's kind of a tradition or whatever. Don't do that just in case it backfires, Good manners, really win out. They help people treat you very well. All things being equal. Butween says, let's say you accept the salary given. How would you advise at a later time, say 6 months to a year, to ask for more money, maybe using competence as leverage? Yeah, see, like, okay, listen, first of all, there's nothing wrong with accepting their first offer if their first offer makes sense for you. The way you do this is you do your homework ahead of time. You find out, before you even engage with these people, what amount of money makes sense and what other things do you need? Like maybe it's not so much cash, but you need certain benefits or, something like that. Whatever it is that you need, you work all that out ahead of time. Then when you get into an exchange with these people as you're negotiating, over email or in person, about like compensation and stuff, you know exactly what your position is and you stick to it, right? Now, if you did that, and then let's pretend that 6 months later, I don't know, something changed, right? Because unless something changed, you would not normally get a situation where you got exactly what worked for you, but then 6 months later, it completely doesn't work for you. You know what I mean? Like something has to have happened. Either that or you didn't do a good job at figuring out what you needed, right? Okay. And this is important because it depends how it appears to them when you go back and ask for more money. If you say this is fine, and then a short time later, you go back and say, it's not fine, I need more, right? There's some implications in that, right? The most obvious one is that you said you were fine with this, barely 6 months later, now you're not fine. Does this mean that you're going to, the implication is that either you're bluffing or you're just talking, it's just noise, or you're willing to leave over this. Now, if you're willing to leave over it, I got some concerns. If I give you what you're asking for now, are you going to come back in another 6 months and threaten to quit because you need even more? These are things that are going through the hiring manager's head, your boss's head, when you do this, right? Okay. Now, if you'd signed on and you worked for 4 years, and then you come back and say, I need a little more pay, that might be a little more reasonable. It might not trigger some of these concerns, but 6 months in, you're already changing your tune over pay. You haven't even made it a full year. Usually the standard is for compensation to be reviewed once a year. That's the tradition. So you haven't even made it to a year, and already you're asking for more, right? I went into this like a couple of weeks ago where I sort of explained the whole thing. Just so everyone knows, like they've done extensive studies on this too, and something like 90% of all the employees in the world, in every industry, in every country, they feel that they're not being paid enough. They feel undercompensated. That's a universal feeling. The good employees feel that way. The bad employees feel that way. Everyone, like 90% of people, feel that they deserve more money for what they do. That's like the default human condition. You could be terrible at your job, but you still feel that you're underpaid. Okay? So, what does this mean? This means that it's a common thing for bosses to be approached by their workers and say, I think I deserve more money. Pay me more. Right? Now, sometimes it's legitimate. They're honestly, legitimately underpaid. And they should be paid more because they're working for much, like maybe 60% of what they could be making if they took another job across the street. Right? Sometimes it's legitimate. Other times it's not. They're being paid actually pretty damn well for what they do. They might not even be a very good employee. And in reality, they should feel lucky to have this job. But they feel like they're underpaid. They should have more, right? So all this means is that it's a regular thing for bosses to be approached by their workers in some way, shape, or form for the worker to say, I think you need to pay me more. Now, the problem here is that if you've been working there for, say, 3 years for that salary, and you're saying, no, I am worth more than this, so therefore you need to pay me more, you're contradicting what your behavior has demonstrated. If you've stayed there for 3 years and accepted this compensation, that suggests that that is what you're worth. If it wasn't what you're worth and you were worth 3 times that, presumably you would have left and taken any other job where they would pay you what you're worth if it's 3 times that. But you haven't. You've stayed here the whole time, right? So the direct evidence shows that that is what you're worth. That's what it suggests, right? So you put these two facts together, And the standard response a hiring manager will have is, like all things being equal, is they're going to call your bluff. They're going to say, no, you are paid what you're worth, and then they might try and make it sound pleasant by saying, well, it's not that I don't want to pay you more, it's that I can't. I would love to, but I just can't. It's not in the budget. I'm sorry, but this is all there is, And then what happens in the vast majority of these situations is that the worker just stays. They don't leave. Even if they threaten to leave, they don't leave. Something like 90% of all these cases, people don't actually leave. They like to bluff and say, pay me more or I will leave. And usually the manager, if the manager has any experience with this, if they've been a manager for any amount of time and they've been managing people, they know that 90% of the time you call the employee's bluff and they just stay. It was just an empty threat. They weren't going to leave. And that's probably because they're not actually underpaid. They can't make a lot more by going across the street, So that's the general rule. Obviously, there are exceptions. Some people are underpaid and, they have the great pleasure of saying, pay me more or I leave. And the boss says, I'm sorry. And you say, okay, well, here's my notice, right? And then they go across the street and they make double. I did that when I was in my 20s. I worked for a company that exploited people. It underpaid everybody. It preyed on their ignorance. And then you find out that another company, who's a bit less sophisticated, but their competitor, they're paying like almost double. And they're like located in your hometown. They're located in the same town. So you just go literally across the town and you do the same job for nearly double the amount of pay. But I remember asking my manager about that before I left. I said, I think that I should be paid more. I was curious to see what they said. And the answer was, oh, no, we've done our research and, we know these things and, we've got people that really understand these things that are like setting the compensation and, you are paid, accurately for the value you generate, all this kind of crap. It's like, okay, well, goodbye. You know what I mean? But that's their default response. Now, if you're a very valuable employee, I've seen it where, and I've talked about it before, where what they do is they employ that tactic. They say, no, I'm going to call your bluff. And then the employee says, fine, I'm leaving, goodbye. And then they wait until the first day where the employee is gone. They serve out their notice period just to see if they're going to, walk the talk. And they actually leave. And then their first day at home, the boss calls them and says, come on back, you got your money. It was just, they wanted to just verify, right? If I'm actually going to lose this employee, or like most employees, I'm not, right? So that's what I've seen play out. And I've been on both sides of that. So that's what I'd say. So asking for more money, it's kind of the only way I think that really, really works, unless you're prepared to actually leave, like you have like an actual other job offer or something where it's a no-brainer. I got an offer. I'm not going to tell you who it's for, but they're going to pay me this. Can you match it? Pretty simple, right? They say no. Okay, goodbye, right? Nothing personal, but they're willing to pay me more, so I got to go. See ya. Right? If you don't have that, the only way it would really work, I think, is if, you appeal to like if you have a boss that's kind of a humanist and, they like you on a personal level and they want to agree, right? Without any of this verification, they trust you, right? The reality is that, despite everything I've said, hiring managers as a general rule, or bosses, same thing, they want to pay you more. They would love it if their subordinates are all paid like $1 million a year. They would love that because you would have the most dedicated, hardworking team of people under them that would never complain, never push back. Whatever they say, their response from the workers is always, yes, sir. If they were paid that well. You want them to be paid that well. The problem is that it's not that you don't want them to be paid that well, it's just that you can't. You don't have the power. You wish you could pay them more. Either you have no control over it, or if you do, money's tight, So, or it's a variable industry. There's big boom bust cycles, and it's like, I don't want to pay you all more, and then like run out of money in 6 months when the business dips, and then have to lay you all off. I'd rather have that security. I really feel I might need it in this economic climate or something. It's not always like people being jerks. It's there's valid reasons. So the best thing to do after all this long-winded sob story is, if you feel that you're underpaid, which you could be, go out and get a job offer for more. Okay, you got a job in your hand that you like, but you feel it's not as good. Get a job offer for more, and then whichever way it works out, you're going to be making more, and you have some options, and you're negotiating from a position of power. If they say no, you say fine. I'm going to do this. That's how you do it. Don't negotiate with a bluff. Don't demand something if it's a bluff. Your bluff's going to be called in all likelihood. But people don't like that answer because that involves work, right? Okay, let's see. Lion says, if you're asked how much you made in your last job, how would you decline and respond without offending the hiring manager? Great question. They say, we need to know your current salary. What is your current salary, right? That's what they do. And you say something like, well, I actually have a personal policy where I don't disclose that information because there are confidentiality issues, there are privacy issues, identity theft issues. I'm sure you understand. And then they put the screws to you and they say, oh, I'm sorry, our process, our rules that I've just made up require that you tell me things like that. And I also need your credit card number. And you say, first of all, you have a big smile on your face. Is that a smile? It's kind of a grin, right? Like, you don't look like this and you don't look like that, right? You have a smile, which means that you look pleasant and approachable and like you're having a good time, like I'm trying to do right now. And you say exactly the same thing to them again. They say, we really need you to do this. And you say, well, I'm sorry, as I just explained, I can't give you that because of my personal policy of not disclosing that type of information for reasons of confidentiality and privacy. I'm sure you understand. I know you guys also have that policy for sensitive information. So do I. I'm sorry, but I can't give you that. Right? And whatever else they say, normally any reasonable person drops it there. But if they do continue, all you give them is the answer that you've just given them. There's no reason to make it awkward and weird. You have a great big smile on your face. You're very happy to explain. There's no reason why this should be a point of contention. I've just learned over time that it's just an undesirable and unjustified risk to give out that type of information. Confidentiality and privacy are very serious issues. I'm sure you'll agree. So as a result, I have a policy of not disclosing it. Can't give you any other answer than what I've already given. I'm very sorry. Something like that, right? There you go. And you can play this game all day. Right? I know in some cultures you do the forced laugh thing. I've never actually done that. I've always fantasized about doing that, where it starts to get awkward. So you just pretend to laugh like it's a joke. I've seen that in movies. I've seen other people talk about doing that, but I've never actually done that, where you go, yes. Anyway, listen, I'm ready for the next question. Yeah, what some other third-party employer has paid you is none of their business, just so you know, okay? This is the thing. We are conditioned to be accommodating to seeming authority figures, right? I did a video recently about this where it's the educational system. We're so conditioned to following the rules and respecting the teacher and answering the question when it's asked of us. that this is a good thing. It's not some big conspiracy, but it can have some unintended disadvantages, and this is one of them, right? You get into a job interview. You feel beholden to them because you're wanting something from them. You're wanting them to pick you for this job. You want the job. And the nature of the encounter is that they will ask you questions and you answer, right? But then they abuse the privilege and they start asking you questions to which they are not entitled to the answers, right? And they're fully aware of this in most cases. They know what they're doing. They know that it's not something that they have any right to know that. If you voluntarily tell them, that's fine, but they can't make you, But even though they know this, they'll push and they'll see if you'll give them some of that information. And this is one of those cases. Chris says, if the hiring manager says that the starting hourly range is that per hour, but doesn't share why, what are the best reasons to justify requesting the top of the pay range? Well, okay, there's a couple of things with that. First of all, they don't need to say why, and neither do you, right? I'm sorry, the job pays this. And then somebody says, well, why? It's like, well, it just does. I have my reasons, and I'm not going to go into them right now. It doesn't concern you, And besides, if I really got into it, it would be quite complicated, it would be quite lengthy. I'm just not going to do it for the purposes of brevity. I'm not going to explain the reasons for every single thing I say, Secondly, why are you requesting the top of the pay range? I assume this is in the interview stage, okay? So if it's in the interview stage, avoid this. You do not want this discussion. You save this discussion until they make you an offer, if you get that far, okay? And then, let's pretend hypothetically that you get that far, they decide they want to hire you, and then they make you an offer and they say it pays this much, say $18 an hour, right? Now, you feel that, okay, well, that's a bit disappointing because the last job where I worked doing this exact thing, they're paying me $25 an hour, right? I don't understand why I'm all of a sudden taking this big pay cut, right? So I want $25 an hour or, whatever. Maybe let's say you're happy with 21, whatever it is that, you decide on. It's more than they're offering you, right? You don't have to justify it. Just, I'm sorry, I need this, right? Now, this is the problem, right? Because I suspect what is happening here, Chris, is that, you see, you're looking for a way to persuade them that, they should give you 21, right? And that you're hoping to change their mind if they think that $21 per hour is reasonable. Well, let's say you feel that $25 an hour is what's reasonable. You're hoping to change their mind for them to say, hey, on further reflection, based on this information that you've told us, you're right. $25 an hour would be a better pay for this position. So we're going to change the range for this position to $25 an hour, right? You see, you're hoping to persuade them. You can't, okay? Everything happens some of the time. There's always exceptions, but as a general rule, you can't. They've decided this role pays in this range, right? That's what we feel is reasonable. And I don't care what seemingly logical argument somebody makes. Sorry, $21 per hour is what we consider reasonable for this, right? So you're not going to be able to change their mind in the vast majority of situations, right? But that's not what this is about. This is not about convincing anyone. This is about stating your position and saying, like, look, you've decided you want me for this. You've made me an offer. It doesn't make any sense for me to take it for $21 an hour. I'm already making $21 an hour right now. I would like 25. So I'm going to need you to scratch out 21 and put in 25, and then we got a deal, right? You don't have to justify it. You're not trying to change anyone's mind, right? You're just simply stating, this is what I need. right? Now, they have the perfect right to refuse and say, I'm sorry, too rich for my blood. We pay 21, that's all we can do, so take it or leave it for 21, right? And they stick to that, right? Great. Well, if you've done your homework and it doesn't make any sense for you to take 21, then you say, okay, well, thank you very much for your very generous offer. We'll be in touch, which means, of course, goodbye, right? You know, so that's the reality, right? So it's not about persuasion, negotiation. Like in this situation, what you're not doing, it may look like you're persuading them, but it's not that at all, right? It's two parties that have both done their homework and they say, we feel that paying this much is reasonable. And the other party says, well, for me personally, in my life, considering my options right now, this amount of money is reasonable for me. Nothing below. That's my cutoff. You can also make it more sophisticated and you could say, well, listen, maybe there's multiple dimensions here. Okay, maybe I can't make you move on the hourly wage, but I can get you to give me another week of vacation or give me, more generous benefits or extra flexibility or more time off. Maybe there's some leeway there where you can push for more. But once again, it's based on, have you done your homework? Have you fully examined what makes sense for you and what doesn't? It's about knowing where that line is drawn and sticking to it, and you don't have to justify anything. When somebody wants to buy a house or something, and the real estate agent says it costs X, right? If a potential buyer said, well, why does it cost X? It's because I have determined that it costs X. End of discussion, And then if the buyer makes an offer, it's at X minus 50,000 or something, does the real estate agent say well, how did you come up with that? Why are you? Because if you can convince me, then I'll lower the price. It's no, I want this. Yes or no? That's the position that both parties have. And sometimes it just doesn't work out because there's no zone of possible agreement, Does that make any sense, Chris? There's a lot of principles here, all stacked on top of each other. It's a little bit hard sometimes to explain it all, but hopefully that's somewhat helpful. Roxanne says, if the promotion or raise is not given by the manager and you've been working there for 4 years, could you present all your achievements to negotiate to get a promotion? Well, what do you mean by negotiate? See, that's the thing. People are using that word wrong. Are you trying to persuade them? Or are you literally going to negotiate? Because negotiate is based on having multiple options, right? So if your only option is to stay there, then you can't negotiate. You can't force their hand. What you're hoping is maybe to persuade them and say you deserve more money, so we'll give it to you, right? That's a different thing. Negotiate is when you have different options. Now, the most basic option is to say, I have two options. I can either stay and pay whatever they decide to pay me, or I can leave and be unemployed, right? Those are my two options. Preferably, you have more than that. If you get another job offer in your hand, they're paying you, let's say they pay you $100,000 a year, and you've just got a job offer for 120, right? Then you can actually negotiate. You can go back to your boss and say, look, I've been here for 4 years. I'd like to think I've done a great job based on my performance reviews. You certainly seem to think I've done a great job. I believe that I am worth more than 100,000. I believe I'm worth 120. So I'm hoping that within a month or within 2 months, you'll be able to increase my annual pay to 120,000. Now if they go, well, good one, no, how can I put this? Then you say, okay, well, listen, I certainly respect your decision. Here's my notice. Goodbye. Right? And then you take the job for 120. So whichever way it works out, you win. You're making 120, right? That's the way to do it, right? If you don't have that other option, you are at the mercy of whatever they pay you if you have no other options. Negotiating power comes from having other options, like having an alternative, right? If they don't do what you're hoping. Okay, so without that, it becomes an empty sort of threat if you're not really willing to leave and be unemployed. If you're not willing to die on this hill or whatever they call it, you know what I mean? That's the situation. So if you're trying to persuade them, then you can use every trick in the bag to try and make a persuasive argument that they should want to pay you more money. Probably the biggest threat is your threat to leave. You can't threaten to slow down because that paints a target on your back. If they feel that you're like a bad employee, you're slacking off, then your entire job is in jeopardy at whatever pay, right? So I would not recommend that. But the one threat you have is if you feel you're worth this and they're paying you this, your threat is to leave. So that better have some teeth. That better be a real option for you if you're going to try and do this. Other than that is persuasion, and the only way you could really do it is appeal to like the humanist sort of element of your boss. If they're a reasonable person, they like you, there's like emotions and friendship and all that kind of stuff, then that's the way you would do that, Yeah, like to answer your question more directly, could you present all your achievements? Yes. I could get an employee coming to me and saying like, I think I should be paid more. I have won this award. I have been commended on my last 4 performance appraisals. I successfully completed this project, which is not normal. Most people fail at this kind of thing, but I did it. And as I'm sure you know, we have a great working relationship. I've always been very accommodating, very easy to deal with, and I've represented the organization very favorably over the years. Could you pay me more money? And I would say, yeah, you're absolutely right. And you have a lot of things to your name. And for that reason, I do regard you as a very valuable employee. And, I look upon you very favorably. And I thank you for all the incredible efforts you've provided. Unfortunately, I don't have any more money in the budget to pay you any more money. But if ever something comes up in the future, I'll keep your name in mind. You know what I mean? Like, that's the obvious sort of outcome of it. And I'm not saying that to be a jerk. I'm saying that to be realistic. Like, that's probably what you're going to encounter. Considering, like I mentioned about 20 minutes ago, bosses encounter this all the time. Everybody feels underpaid, regardless of who you are. 90% of employees across the board feel that they're underpaid, whether they are or not. And also, about 90% of employees, when they communicate this, it's an empty threat. If they, don't get what they want, then they, I might leave or something. It's like 90% of the time, it's a bluff. They're not going to leave. And they're not going to leave because they're not actually underpaid a lot of times. Or they're just not looking. They don't want to. It's inertia. So a lot of hiring managers knowing this, will adopt this position. So if you're not prepared to leave and you're not forcing my hand, sorry, I'm not just going to give you money to do the same job. Right? It's as if the grocery store said to you, when you buy your food, they say, I know you usually pay $10 for this, food product, but I really feel you should pay $20 from now on. Okay? Do we have an agreement? I mean, what are you going to say to that? You're going to say no to get the same thing. Yeah, I do like that product. It is really awesome, but I always buy it for $10. I don't feel a need to all of a sudden give you $20, just because you ask, right? You behave exactly the same way. Everyone does. So this is what you're up against. I'm not saying this as a negative thing. I'm saying to help you. If you want to force their hand, go get a job offer for the amount that you feel you're worth. First of all, it validates that you are worth that much. Then, whichever way this works out, you win. That's the way to do it. It requires a bit more work, though. So a lot of people don't. You're welcome, Lion. J-Song says, similar to Roxanne, but could I negotiate a higher salary as part of a promotion? How would I go about it? Well, hopefully I covered a lot of the principles that are at play. I don't have the leverage of another offer, but I feel the raise may be under market value. Yeah, so who cares? You know, the thing about market price is that some companies, they pay above market. That means that they intentionally pay a lot more than the average price for someone. Even if you, let's say for the sake of argument that you could get accurate information on what is the average price for that qualified employee. I'm going to turn down my camera because it's brighter than all hell. You know, and by the same token, there are a lot of companies that pay under market, which means that they intentionally pay below market price, right? They get a much higher employee turnover, and they don't tend to end up with the best employees long term, but they're okay with that because the amount of cost savings they've made in their labor cost makes up for it, right? Now, I'm not saying these are good or these are bad, but I mean, that is a thing. So, you know, market price is not this be-all, end-all thing that a lot of recruiters seem to think it is. You know, like, it doesn't work like that. And if you look at the data, you know, from people studying the stuff, you can see, you know, that's why there's a range, you know? You know what I mean? Some jobs, yeah, they pay you a lot more, but it's a hell of a lot more demanding, right? It's not always necessarily the right thing for you to be paid above market price. I once worked for a company that was like, it was absolutely terrible culture. It was like living hell working for these people. They paid something like 15% premium across the board for every job. So if you worked at that company and you were an accountant, or you were a technician, or you were a manager, or you were like an airline pilot, you know, whatever you were in the company, you were making 15% more than you would on average, right? Like in every job at every level. But the reason they paid that premium was because it was such a terrible place to work that they could not retain people, you know, long term. You know what I mean? So market price isn't this thing that says, oh, that's what you're worth. The other thing is that if you're going to be paid market price, it also assumes that you are an average worker, right? Now, 50% of people will be below average, 50% of people will be above average. Maybe you're far above average. Maybe you do a lot better job and you're a lot more productive than the typical person in that role, you know? In which case, should you be satisfied with market price? No, that wouldn't be accurate for you, all things being equal, right? Or maybe you're below average in terms of performance. You're younger, you haven't done it very long, so you're not really that efficient at it. Maybe, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Market price isn't this thing that everyone should pay for it to be fair. They could be paying above market price for you, and it still might not be fair, you know, considering where you work and who you are. Like, you know, how productive and how good of an employee you are. You know, the other thing is that for most jobs, you can't get accurate information about market price. And I know because not only have I tried in the past many times, but I've like paid management consulting firms that supposedly specialize in this to give me like, you know, supposedly more accurate information. And, you know, no, it didn't turn out like that. So that's my impression of it. And a lot of jobs, they're just not bulk jobs that you can get a lot of data on, you know? You know, assistant sewerage treatment attendant in this city. What is the market price for that? How many people are in that role in that city? 5? Can you get information on those 5? No, so you have no idea, you know, what the average is, you know what I mean? So it can be very inaccurate to always go by market price. It serves as a very general indicator, you know, but beyond that, don't base your assessment of like, am I being paid fairly on market price? A lot of times it'll be above, you know? I don't have the leverage of another job. I feel it raise the market value. I guess I meant persuade. Yeah, listen, it's the same problem. we're squabbling over semantics. It just frames it better what the situation is. If you're persuading someone, you're trying to sell them on it, right? It helps if you have something to offer, right? Like, for example, if a little more money would help make you more enthusiastic about some upcoming project or upcoming assignment that you have, not that you're threatening to slack off, but it would help motivate you. It'll help you to be more attuned to advancing yourself at that organization or something like that. You know what I mean? Like there's other things in there, but trying to get people to pay you more money to do the same thing is always kind of dicey. If people are really looking out for their bottom line, they're not going to do that. The only reason they would give out more money is because their hands being forced, right? Everybody feels they need more money. The boss feels that they want more money, and maybe they didn't get the raise that they wanted or something, but then they have an employee coming to them saying, well, I deserve more money. You know what I mean? You never know what's going on. So it's always very, very dicey. It seems to depend on personalities and all that kind of stuff. It could be a situation where, whenever the boss needs a thing, they need a favor, you're always there. The boss comes to you and says, listen, I know this is not technically part of your job, but can I get you to do this? And you say, not a problem, happy to help, right? You do that 5 times in a row, and then you go to your boss and say, can you bump me up just a little bit more? Remember how I did all those things for you, which, it was my pleasure to do, but could you maybe do this for me? Is that okay? Something like that. Maybe that type of thing might work. It's based off persuading someone and relationships and emotions and, empathy and all that kind of stuff. That may be the route to go if you don't have an actual alternative. Like, if you can't leave, that might be the direction to go. In which case you would not just go and ask for a raise, you would, plan this a little bit. Do a few favors, do like that kind of stuff, maybe a month or two, and then strategically go 2 months later and say, I did that and that and that. Well, here's something you can maybe do for me. And then, present some seemingly logical argument. Well, according to market price, I should be right here, That's not the reason why they're doing it. That's just, they're trying to justify it. They don't want to, all things being equal, they won't want to just do it as a favor. They'll want to officially have a justification for it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Listen, Roxanne, it's actually a good thing. If you're worth what you feel you are, okay? Wouldn't it be good to confirm that? And then if you can confirm it, wouldn't it be good to see what else is out there? Rather than just staying where you are as a default, wouldn't it be good to be aware of all this and see, I can work there and I can work there. They're actually paying a lot better, and they're looking for people like me. I'm totally qualified to do that. Wouldn't it be a good thing to discover that? So don't look at it as like, oh crap, I got to do all this extra work just to get this thing I wanted. Maybe try not to look at it like that. Look at it as like, well, this could open some doors for me. If nothing else, I have a bit more security because I see that I could go and do all these different things if I wanted to, and I don't have to take a pay cut. In fact, I could get a boost. So think of it that way, if that helps. Amaze says, negotiating without options, especially if unemployed, is akin to a toothless dog barking. Of course, it works sometimes. Yeah. I mean, it's complicated, but those are the general principles. Chris says, I have made the mistake of waiting for the employer to offer a raise first instead of requesting one. For some reason, I've always felt like requesting a raise puts a negative check mark on my file. I understand entirely what you mean, because you're now doing something in your own self-interest that is contrary to their interests, right? So yeah, it might feel kind of bad, especially if you have a track record of like just pleasing people all the time, right? So I understand. But But maybe that thing I said a moment ago about like, you do them a few favors, you do the boss a few favors, and then go to them and say, like, well, how I did this and I did that, it's like, I enjoy working here. I enjoy being helpful. I've been doing my research and this is where I am. And, in relation to market price and stuff like that, would you be able to bump me up just a little bit? It would, help me to feel that, I'm valued and all this kind of stuff. And I can go on and assisting you in any way that, comes up, something like that. Like, I don't know, something of that nature. Like, it's more of a positive thing. It's like, this is an opportunity for us to work together. I can, be just as useful. I can be even more useful to you in the future, just help me out with this. I'm sure that's reasonable. You look at it that way and you try and position it like that, which is probably the reality, and so it doesn't become this negative, awkward thing. It becomes more of an opportunity, a positive thing. J-Song says, the bottom line, I have to wrap this up very soon, in a couple of minutes. I'm just going to respond to these, and then I'm coming right back, actually. I've got another live stream that begins in 7 minutes. J-Song says, the bottom line I'm hearing is unless you have alternatives, you have no leverage to negotiate. Officially, yeah. You see, if they wanted to play hardball with you, those are your options. Either you stay and take whatever they feel like paying you, or you leave, right? I mean, can you force them to pay you more when they don't want to? No, right? Like, unless they're breaking a law or something, I suppose. But I mean, we're assuming that that's not the case. My thought was that since I was being promoted, the company was committed to investing in me and keeping me happy long term. That made me naive. You're right. It's not naive in that that's what they should want to do, right? Like, if they're looking at it like that, they're looking at long-term investment in their employees, okay? If that's the norm for your industry, that employees do stay long-term, and if you invest in them, they do pay off, if that's what the history has shown, then that's not a silly thing to think. But just because it's logical and it has a certain logic to it doesn't necessarily mean that's how they think and that's what they're going to try and do. So, you know what I mean? So you're not an idiot for thinking that. It's far from it. But you know what I'm saying? Just because it's logical for them to do it doesn't mean that they're going to do it. Those are two different things. You could get a real prize idiot in there that doesn't believe in that. They don't believe in that principle. They believe in grinding employees down into the dust, and harsh discipline is the only way to get them to perform. That's just a thing that we see in some industries, and some people hold those opinions, and it depends who you're dealing with. Roxanne says, yes, I can look for other jobs and get more offers outside. You're so right. I'm looking to apply at other jobs right now. Good. Listen, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Always be looking. Always be open to more opportunities. You will, as I smack my microphone around, you will always win if you do that, okay? Just manage your risk. Don't throw good opportunities away. But it never hurts to just be tuned in to what other options there are out there. The more options you have, the more secure you will be, the more leverage you have, the more things open up, opportunities open up before you. Listen, I have to get rolling. I've got another live stream in a couple of minutes, but I'll be back on this channel in literally 5 minutes. So stick around for my next live stream. It's called Honest HR Nitrous, where we talk more about the reality of things rather than the theory. And I wish each and every one of you all the best. If you're looking to get more into this and get more stuff from me, check out that course. There's a link in the description. That's where I put all my advice for this kind of stuff, all in one place with, procedures and templates and all that kind of thing. It also helps you to learn how to network if you're an introvert, if that's a big thing for you. Check out that course if you are looking to tack on some high-level communication skills that can help you in your career, especially if you're going to try and climb the ladder, get into upper management. That's when you really need to tack on several things, and that's one of them. Also, link in the description under this live stream. And finally, if you want to learn more about business, there's that right there, the $100 MBA, which is I have an MBA. I've been the CEO of a company, and I've put a lot of that learning into that course. You can learn anything you would learn in an MBA program. The catch is that it's self-study. So you get a reading list, you get all the textbooks that they use in places like Harvard MBA in their Harvard Business School in their MBA program. And you learn the same material from the same source. And I provide videos that guide you through it. And I give you my take on things. And I also give you summaries of everything and that sort of stuff. So if that's what you're thinking of doing, if that's what you're interested in, it can enhance your management skills and understand how businesses work and understand why they do things the way they do. And so everything makes sense to you. If you're an entrepreneur or you have an entrepreneurial flair to do side hustles and things, this also is tremendously useful for that. So anyway, check out those. I will be back next week at the same time with another edition of How to Get Hired. And I will be back in about 3 minutes on this channel with another live stream. Thanks so much. You guys are awesome. Take care.